are so many different types of people and diverse ideas and backgrounds, but that we can all come together because we care about where we live and where we work. But more than that, it's an international organization. We also care about the world we live in, and so that means a lot to me as well. So I can think of countless stories of Rotarians around the world, whether they were traveling for business or for fun, something happening and they needed some help, and they found it from their fellow Rotarians. So I love that we have that type of relationship and culture here in Milwaukee, but ultimately it's really a worldwide thing.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. I am Club President Darren Miller, President and owner of JM Construction. As we gather virtually today, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I'd like to welcome John Hein, RCM board member and retired attorney with Davis and Kielthal, who will give our invocation today. John?
Good afternoon. Please join me in this invocation. As we gather together from our remote locations through the miracle of technology, let us pause to reflect on the value of community and interpersonal relationships. And may that reflection continue as we learn today what institutions of private higher education provide to our state in their journey through COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll run through a quick club business. I'd like to say thank you to John Ferguson, Director of Business Development at Findor, for his contribution to our Rotary Now More Than Ever video series that played at the beginning of the program. We have another reason to thank John today. Yesterday, John told us that Findor stepped up as gold sponsor for the RCM Scholarship Golf Classic. The good news also does not stop there. He also enlisted fellow Rotarians Brent Pitcher and Bo Sanders of Grave, who stepped up as silver sponsors. We'd like to thank them and all of our sponsors who appear on the screen for their generosity and commitment to making a difference in Milwaukee through the RCM Scholarship Golf Classic. Certainly looking forward to participating in that and seeing everyone there this summer. We also have several volunteer events coming up in April and May. We hope that you can join your fellow Rotarians for a spring cleanup with the Johnson's Park Neighborhood Association on April 10th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We are again participating in the Milwaukee River Keepers Spring Cleanup on Saturday, April 24th. Rotarians will gather at the parking lot at Riverside University High School at 9 a.m. to pick up winter debris at the Rotary Centennial Arboretum. Check your emails and our website for more information on the cleanups and to register to attend. This Thursday, we will be foregoing our noon snack program for a virtual happy hour beginning at 5 p.m. Bring your beverage of choice and connect with fellow Rotarians in that informal setting. And if you missed the announcement last week, we are planning to return to Memorial Hall on May 4th. As you know, the health and safety of our members has been a top priority since the pandemic began. We pay close attention to the latest guidelines and recommendations about COVID-19 from the CDC and the health department here in Milwaukee. We're told that with the vaccine becoming more widely available, it's possible to start beginning to be together safely in person. Our members' opinions always shape the decisions we make here at Rotary. When we ask our members when you'd feel safe coming back to in-person meetings, we learn that more and more people are ready to come back. So we are targeting this May 4th. And yes, of course, we'll continue to have a live stream options for those who prefer to participate from home or office. We will keep you posted as plans firm up. And as we get back in person, we will be asking all of you to RSVP in the early weeks of our return. In the meantime, stay safe, get a vaccine, and we can't wait to see you again in person. And today, I have the pleasure of introducing our program. which features three very special Rotarians. Dr. Dan Johnson, president of Wisconsin Lutheran College, Dr. Christine Pharr, president of Mount Mary University, and Dr. John Walz, president of Milwaukee School of Engineering. They are members of the Wisconsin Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, commonly referred to as WAICU, and they will be talking to us about the many ways private higher education enhances the economy and quality of life here in Wisconsin. We'd like to welcome you all together here with us today. And now I'll be turning the program over to Dr. Walz to get us started.
Thanks, Darren. And it's a pleasure to be here. On behalf of my colleague, we're very happy to be here and tell you about private education here in Wisconsin and what we offer to the citizens and to the state of Wisconsin. So Michelle, can we go to the slides? Great. So one of the first things I'm going to talk about, well, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. So our goal here is to provide some information about what we are, who we are, and what we do. And we're going to do it through the lens of, as Darren mentioned, WAICU. I say WAICU, some people say WAICU. I'm not sure if there's one right way to hear it, pronounce it, but you may hear both of these during this talk. So I'm going to provide an overview about what WAICU is and what it does. I'm going to be then followed by my colleague, Dan Johnson from Wisconsin Lutheran. He's going to talk about how we serve, how private institutions serve our citizens and our state. And then Christine Pharr of Mount Mary will talk about how we've dealt with COVID this past year, and then some facts about our individual institutions. And of course, Q&A at the end. We love that, and we hope you have some good questions for that. We're happy to answer. So you can go to the next slide, Michelle. So yeah, so WAICU, as Darren mentioned, is Wisconsin Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. We are 23 private institutions in the state, 54,000 students. Formed in 1961, so we're 60 years old this year. It's a 501c3. We're headquartered in Madison. And our president is the gentleman that you see there, Dr. Rolf Winganke. He's been doing this for 29 years. So one thing to mention, we're not organized like a public system, UW system. We do not report to Rolf. In fact, he would tell you that he reports to us, but he has been capably leading the association for nearly 30 years, and we work very closely with him. You can see the mission there. It's all about working toward educational opportunity. That is what our focus is, and that is what WAICU helps us to do. Next slide. So these are the 23 members comprising WAICU. I'll talk a little bit more about them, but you can see names you recognize, and my guess is that a number of you in the audience are graduates of one of these institutions, a lot of fantastic institutions. Next slide, Michelle. So, you know, we're private schools, but we offer many, many different things and a wide variety of choices. And that's really one of the great things about the private schools is we offer such a variety to our students. We have institutions that are faith-based, such as those of my other two colleagues today, Wisconsin Lutheran and Mount Mary. We have schools that are more professionally focused. My school, MSOE, Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, and of course the Medical College of Wisconsin is a member, all members of WAICU. We range in size. We have as few as 100 students or so, up to Marquette, around 11,000, which would be the largest university in the WAICU system. And then most of us are primarily in person, but we have one, Hertzing University is primarily an online institution based here in Wisconsin. They are the newest member of WAICU. They just joined a couple of years ago. You have to be a nonprofit to private institution to join, and Hertzing is now a nonprofit university. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, you can see where we're located. We span the state. We go from Northland up on Lake Superior down to Beloit, and then west for Turbo and La Crosse over to Lakeland University in Plymouth. And there are 10 of the schools that are located here in the Milwaukee area. So a huge concentration of schools located in Milwaukee. Okay, next slide, Michelle. So even though we're different in many ways and are in different mission, there are many, many things that we have in common. The most obvious one, of course, being an independent private school, we get no direct support from the state. The UW system schools, for example, receive over $1 billion every year in state support. We are not in any way critical of the UW system. It is an incredible system, and we work very closely with many of those schools. We just like to point out that we think the citizens of Wisconsin get a great bargain because we're educating 54,000 students without direct support. There are programs that support our students. The Pell Grant program, the national program for low-income students. There's a Wisconsin tuition grants program. Those funds go directly to our students, and they can go wherever they want to go. And they do benefit, but not us directly. We're very student-focused, as you'll hear from Dan next. We serve a wide variety of students. This idea that private schools are for rich kids is a myth, and you'll see that. We serve our citizens and we support the economy of Wisconsin. And as I mentioned, we partner very closely with the UW system and the Wisconsin Technical College systems. And I know Christine will talk a little bit about it at the end. We are all part of an organization called HERA, Higher Education Regional Alliance, to support job skills development in Southeast Wisconsin. So we partner well with them. Next slide, please. And the final thing that we have in common is that we support each other. And we do this in a number of different ways. So first and foremost, WAICU is an advocacy group. It really advocates for policies that support our students. I think every state, or at least most states, have a similar organization. There's actually a national organization called NAICU, which does a lot of advocacy at the federal level. And I am actually now was recently elected to be a member of the board of directors of NAICU. WAICU supports our students. There are many programs that they run. They run programs for career development, job search, transfer agreements between the technical colleges and our schools. And again, we advance affordability and accessibility of the private schools in Wisconsin. That's what we're about. The next slide. And the other way that we work together is through collaborative services. So most of our schools in WAICU are relatively small, 2,000, 3,000 students. And by being small, there are a lot of great things about it, but at the same time, we do not have an enormous amount of leverage in doing things that a large system like UW-Madison would have. So we work together and we can do things better and more efficiently. So a number of the schools are parts of a benefits consortium. We share benefits programs, health insurance programs. We have joint, shared purchasing of supply, shared software. There are nearly 50 such programs involving WAICU members working together to benefit. And last year, by doing these programs, we saved the schools a total of over $24 million from these programs. And in fact, if you go back to our founding in 1961, that number would be over 200 million. I think it's $206 million that WAICU schools have saved by working together and doing things together. And that savings go directly to our students. If we don't have to pay as much, then that benefits our students. And that is really what WAICU is all about. How do we help our students? So I'm going to turn it now over to my colleague, Dr. Dan Johnson, and he will talk a little bit more about how we do that and who we are. So Dan?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, John. It's an honor to be here with you. John provided kind of a context of the history and the value of WAICU. I'm going to more share with you some unique aspects that make WAICU unique and really reiterate what John had noted. We have such great admiration and appreciation and support for our public university partners. And I think what you heard too is we have a really unique collaborative spirit amongst the 24 independents as well. But I certainly don't want to in any way give any indication that comparison stats and data points that I'm going to share with you are any kind of us versus them. As I noted, we just greatly value our collective role and just simply want to maybe provide some more context for you to better understand the value of all of our institutions. But as you look at the slide, 24% of all the bachelor's degrees in the state of Wisconsin come from our collective of WAICU schools, 25% of engineering and business degrees. But when you look at 41% of the health-related degrees in the state of Wisconsin come from our collective schools within WAICU, and over 51% of our nursing degrees. And I think if we all know anything, there's a shortage of nursing graduates. We recognize that we play a role with that together with our public partners. And it's something that we really take great focus on as well. So 24% of all the bachelor's degrees in the state of Wisconsin are part of our consortium schools. Next slide, please. We also produce 35% of all the advanced degrees in the state. But if you look at some of the subsets there, 47% of all the medical doctoral degrees come from WAICU, 59% PA degrees, 100% of dentistry degrees, 45% of master's in education degrees, 45% of MBAs come from our WAICU schools, and then 37% of our pharmacy degrees as well. And so I would just note that a few months ago as well, John had noted the partnerships that we provide with and avenues of partnering with our tech schools. A few months ago, Walz, together with the Wisconsin Technical College System, came together with really quite a historic agreement. It was a college credit transfer agreement, which really makes the transferability of people from a two-year school into any of our schools that are listed here to be much more flexible, much more transparent, much more user-friendly, much more speed of degree to completion. And so I just wanted to note that we provide a significant contribution, not just with our undergraduate students, but also our graduate degrees as well. Next slide, please. John had noted something that we just believe, I think, is a real misnomer. I think sometimes people think of private independent schools that they're schools for the wealthy exclusively, or they're schools for the privileged. And just here to tell you that couldn't be farther from the truth. 31% of all of our WAICU students are first generation students. I'm the youngest of 6 kids in my family. I'm a first generation student. And I really think we all collectively understand that first generation students have a unique set of circumstances and needs that we need to really step up as schools and deliver on. And I think we do that very, very well. My school, as an example, this year, I just ran the numbers, we're about 40% first gen students. But this idea that independent private schools are just for the privileged, this couldn't be farther from the truth. Next slide, please. And tied to that is students, low-income students. 31% of our WAICU undergrads qualify for Pell Grants. And you can see, I think one of the greatest needs that we have is to really help the underserved populations of our communities. And we really see it as part of our job and obligation. John mentioned we don't get a dollar for anybody. It's basically friends and philanthropy from our donors of our institutions combined with the student revenue that are provided. But we have to provide heroic and transformational scholarships for our students, particularly our low-income students. And just want to note here that this is near and dear to our hearts and something that we take very seriously when 31% of our undergrads qualify for the federal Pell Grant program. Next slide, please. We'll also note that WAICU undergrad student body really provides about 27% of our population are students of color. And we just want to so desperately reflect the communities in which we are perched. And we take this charge seriously, and I just want you to note that we'll continue to do everything we can to be more reflective of our communities and continue to enroll a growing number of students of color. Next slide, please. We also know that there's a finite number of 18-year-olds within the state. Matter of fact, as we look ahead in the next 3, 4, 5 years in particular, there's what's called a demographic cliff where the number of 18-year-olds it's a shrinking demographic. But we also know as a collective that there are many, many working adults that maybe started college and life got in the way. And we also believe that our institutions are pathways for non-traditional students as well. Matter of fact, students over the age of 25 make up 33% of all of the students at our schools. And so we also recognize and know that the impact of an educated society and the impact that has not only for the quality of life, but also impact on the economy of the entire region. And so just want you to know that our system of schools, we take quite seriously our cause and our mission to attract a growing number of non-traditional students as well. Next slide, please. I think the final comment that I would make, we hear and learn and talk a lot about in this country about student debt and the crisis of student debt. And I tell you, it is on the hearts and minds of the leaders of every one of our schools that we need to make this as affordable as possible. We want to enroll not just students, so we want to enroll students that walk across the stage and graduate as productive citizens, citizens that can pay their bills, citizens that can manage their debt. And our very, very low default rate just shows our commitment to that. And I would argue that the narrative of the student debt story across this country is not a narrative about our schools. I think if you want to look at the farthest left-hand side of that column, I think we need to start talking about disaggregating the pockets of debt and from where these students come. And I just want you to know that the students that are part of our consortium of WAICU, that leaders within our schools, we have to make this as affordable as possible, or we won't be able to meet their needs. But at the same time, we are very, very serious about debt, about the debt crisis. And I think the fact that that only 4.3% of our students would default on the student loan comparatively speaks to our collective mission and cause in this regards. And so just wanted to share with you just some data sets, some context to what we believe humbly is an awesome contribution of the schools of WAICU. And with that, I'll turn it over to Christine.
Good afternoon, then. I am Christine Pharr from Mount Mary University, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how COVID-19 impacted the WAICU schools. I want to say first that this is probably not much different in a lot of ways from the way it impacted the state and the technical colleges. And we could probably spend an entire hour talking just about COVID-19. But I'm just going to give you a sort of a high-level overview of what happened at the WAICU schools. Obviously, like all schools, we transitioned very quickly to online learning, usually in a week or two. And that was pretty successful for most of us. However, we know that many of our students lacked access to technology or adequate Wi-Fi. And so that really caused many of us to pivot to provide computers and hotspots to our students in order that they didn't miss a beat in terms of continuing on with their education. Like the publics, we lost our revenue during WAICU. There was decreased enrollment, people who decided this is not the right time to go to college. Our residence halls, many of them emptied out or decreased their residency considerably, and we had to refund that as well as their room and their board in order to allow them to have the resources to find other housing. There were also tremendous numbers of increased expenses for COVID testing and tracing. We equipped many of our classrooms with technology that has never before been present. And so that had allowed students to be able to learn remotely as well as to come onto campus. We purchased protective equipment. We spaced out our classrooms. We did things with our air systems to make them safer. And a rough estimate that we had last year when this all began was that this was going to cost the WAICU schools $245 million. I think that number has only risen since then, but that was our original estimate that WAICU gathered from the private school presidents. Certainly, I think because of our missions, we all worked to try not to have to furlough or lay off employees, but there were situations in which that did have to happen because the impact was so immediate and so extensive. Next slide, please. But there is some good news, and I just like to share what some of that was. The federal government provided us with about $121 million. That's about half of what our estimated loss was, but it certainly made a tremendous difference to many schools. About half of those funds went straight to students. And there was a great need for that. Many of our students lost jobs or got reduced hours. Some of their parents lost jobs. And so they needed money to provide for housing, to provide for food, transportation, childcare. And there was a significant need. Those students could use these funds to pay down their balances at the colleges and universities, but they did not need to, and we could not dictate that. So we simply gave the money to the students and they could choose how they were to use it. We were very grateful to the state of Wisconsin, who provided us with funds to help with testing at our different universities. And I think that helped us be able to manage this much, much better. And there were some additional funds that went to institutions like Mount Mary, which is both a Hispanic serving institution and a minority serving institution. Those were much smaller than the federal funds, but they certainly came in very helpful. And those were also used to help fund some of the costs associated with COVID. The interesting thing about WAICU schools is that, as one of my colleagues mentioned, we tend to be a little on the smaller size. And so because of that, I think we were readily able to adapt to keeping students on campus. By using socially distanced classrooms and technology, we were able to divide classes into 2 classrooms, or to be able to set them further apart in larger conference rooms. So I think the WAICU schools did a pretty good job of keeping a fair number of students on campus who wanted to be there, while at the same time delivering the course curriculum and the services remotely. And when I say the services, I mean there's been a tremendous demand for mental health care during this time. And so most of us have been offering counseling, tutoring, advising, and career development, both on campus and online during this time. The good news is, as the WAICU schools got together and we began to talk about this, many of the fears that the college campuses would be breeding grounds for COVID did not materialize at the WAICU schools. We found little, if any, on-campus transmission of COVID. Our students did get COVID to some extent, but it was mostly because of employment off campus or because of the choices that they made in their personal lives, or from their families who also were exposed in various ways. But we felt that we were able to operate safely, and we worked with, for those of us in the city of Milwaukee, we worked with the Milwaukee Health Department to make sure that we were meeting all the expectations of operating a safe campus. And I just want to say that Dr. John Raymond was a great gift to not only the city of Milwaukee, but to the WAICU schools during this time, because he kept us updated and answered questions as needed. And that has been a true gift to all of us. And then another silver lining of all of this is that we spent a significant amount of resources on new technology and developing pedagogy in order to deliver curriculum remotely in a much better way. And I think this will only serve us well in the future to make higher education more accessible to a variety of students in various situations. I think I speak for most of my WAICU colleagues in saying that we appreciate and value our on-campus community building and the way that we support students in a face-to-face environment. But we also recognize that there are students who have different needs, and accessibility to education is really important. COVID-19 has helped us move forward in that realm. And so I think it's been a positive thing in some respects. Next slide, please. So we thought we'd kind of come to the end of this presentation and let you ask questions. But first, I think there are some things about WAICU schools that people don't always know. And so what I did was I asked the WAICU presidents, and I could not include every single school. So I tried to focus on the ones in and around Milwaukee mostly. But I asked the presidents, tell us something unique or something that people might not know about your university. So obviously there are many wonderful things about all of our schools, but we wanted to just give you a few that you may or may not be aware of. So next slide. The first school I want to mention is Alverno. And Alverno is a women's college, just like Mount Mary University. It was the first institution in the state of Wisconsin that was granted Hispanic serving status, which means that it has 25% or more of its undergraduate students who are Hispanic. The other thing that Alverno has been known for some time, and for which it has quite a national reputation, is for its competency-based education, which means that it awards successful completion of courses and progression to the next courses based upon students' competency, not assigning them letter grades. And that is a model that has grown and that has certainly raised the visibility of Alverno. Next slide. Carroll University has the distinction of being the first and the oldest higher ed institution in the state. And it's celebrating 175 years of operation this year. It is also one of the few institutions in the nation that has an animal behavior program, which is in fact one of its largest programs. And I asked Cindy Nattinger, so what is the animal that is most common in this program? And she said it was dogs. So I guess if you want to get a trained dog, Carroll's the place to go. Next slide. Carthage College, which is of course located right on beautiful Lake Michigan, has the distinction of being the single institution in the state of Wisconsin designated by NASA to administer space grants to Wisconsin institutions and to direct that consortium. They also are the top producer of Fulbright student fellowships, and they maintain the highest per capita rate of Fulbright fellowships in all Wisconsin institutions of higher education. Next slide. Many of you probably are graduates and know Marquette University perhaps even better than we do. But one of the things I learned in doing this was that Marquette University has the only dental school in the state of Wisconsin. In addition, they have a very strong reputation for the quality of their teaching. They ranked 18th in the nation for undergraduate teaching and 52nd for innovation by a recent US News and World Report. Next slide. And the Medical College of Wisconsin is certainly a gift to our state and to our city. It is the third largest private medical school in the country. And I was interested to know that it has educated or trained nearly 51% of the practicing physicians in the state of Wisconsin. It's also one of the top 100 research universities, and it spends approximately $300 million on that, with an annual economic impact of more than $600 million. So wonderful gift. And I just want to say that many of us benefited from the vaccines that Medical College of Wisconsin made available to us. And in fact, they were employees who volunteered to do this. So Mount Mary is only one of multiple institutions that were provided with the vaccine for all of our employees, and we are very grateful. Next slide. The Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design has a unique mission, and it was #1 in art and design colleges nationwide for helping low-income students attain upper middle-class jobs. And it's also been named a top design school for 6 consecutive years. If you've never had a tour of this institution, I would strongly encourage you to get one. It is absolutely amazing. And the picture that I put here just shows what some of the spaces are like where students are working on really outstanding artistic projects. Next slide. Milwaukee School of Engineering has the unique distinction of providing the highest return on investment of any college or university in the state of Wisconsin, and their students have the highest average early and mid-career salaries of any school or university. And I know many of us really appreciate the ability to collaborate with MSOE, and they're really moving forward in artificial intelligence and some of the really cutting edge programs that are going to serve business and industry quite well. Next slide. Here's my own dearly beloved school. And Mount Mary is very proud of the fact that we were recently rated #1 for ethnic diversity in the Midwest, and #1 for social mobility in the state of Wisconsin, and #3 in the Midwest. How that's defined is that social mobility is the ability to graduate low-income students, that is Pell-eligible students. Our undergraduate population is about 62% women of color. And so we really feel that we make a big difference in the city because most of our students come from Milwaukee and 98% of them stay in the state of Wisconsin upon graduation. The other thing that is exciting about Mount Mary is that we are well into building our new Trinity Woods intergenerational living facility. If you drive by the campus, you'll see this amazing new complex, which is just about completely framed up. It's going to provide housing for School Sisters of Notre Dame, senior citizens over the age of 62, and 24 apartments for single mothers who can live there with their children, and an early childhood education center. Next slide. St. Norbert College up in Green Bay is the only Norbertine college in the world. And we spoke earlier about the loan default rate. They have the distinction of having only a 1% student loan default rate, which is pretty impressive. And so that's a real strong suit for their institution. Next slide. Wisconsin Lutheran College is the youngest college in the WAICU system. It's in its 48th year and has had significant enrollment growth since the recession of 2008, 60%. That's very impressive. It's ranked 2nd in the state for certified public accountants CPA exam pass rate, and it has a 100% pass rate on the NCLEX exam for nurses. And Dan told me only 2 students in the past 4 years had to take it twice. In case you're not familiar, NCLEX is the licensure test that must be passed by nurses in order for them to practice. And 100% pass rate is a pretty phenomenal thing and very, very difficult to achieve. So it speaks very highly for their nursing program. Next slide. So I wanted to just end with a few comments that kind of summarize some of the things that we've told you today about why we think that the WAICU schools make a real valuable contribution to the state of Wisconsin and in fact to the greater Milwaukee area. Clearly, we educate over 1/4 of the Wisconsin's higher education students. And we've given you many examples of the high quality of educational experience that we provide to students of all demographics, not just those who are wealthy, but students of low income, students of color, students with all kinds of different belief systems and backgrounds. So we believe that we make some unique contributions. I explained many of those. One of the things that is pretty much generally true at WAICU schools is that we tend to have smaller class size and strong student support. And what this leads to is good retention, strong graduation rates, and good retention of students within the state of Wisconsin. In order to make our education affordable and to keep that default rate low, we provide significant financial aid. And that does result in those low default rates. And it also allows us to educate significant numbers of low-income students who might not otherwise find a way to get an education. And I want to conclude by saying and reiterating what my colleagues said is that we work very closely with the UW system and the technical systems. And a couple of years ago, there was an alliance formed called the Higher Education Regional Alliance. To the best of my knowledge, there is nothing like this anywhere else in the United States. It is an alliance that consists of all the public, private, and technical colleges in the state. And the presidents of those institutions meet once a month, which is pretty amazing. And it has fingers out into all kinds of things in the state of Wisconsin, but particularly trying to increase retention and graduation rates and to develop programming that meets the needs of business and industry in the greater Milwaukee area. So we think this is incredibly valuable, partnership. And we're very pleased that we are able to work together so well for the last 2 years. And we look forward to many more opportunities in the future. Next slide. We're now going to open it up for questions, and I think Mary's going to facilitate those. But before I do, I just want to say that at the bottom of this slide, there is a link that you can put in your browser, and this will send you to a document that WAICU leadership, Rolf and his team, produce once a year that we call WAICUpedia. And it just has a lot more information about the WAICU schools and the system. And so we wanted you to have access to that in case you have questions that we are not able to get to or to respond to today. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mary. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. And first of all, for everybody that's on the call, you are welcome to switch to gallery view for the Q&A. We always like to see your faces. We'll still encourage you to put your comments in the chat, but it's always fun to see who's here. And thank you, Dan and John and Christine. This was an incredibly informative presentation. I think we all learned a lot, and it's clear you all have something that you can be very proud about, both in your individual institutions and collectively, how you are making a difference across the state. Jeff Martinka says, as a UW and UWM alumni, I confess to a public university bias, but I learned much from this briefing. Thanks for what you do to strengthen the state of Wisconsin and in a way that is fiscally responsible for so many of our students. So thank you. I'm going to go right back up to the top of the chat here. And John Hine, our invocator, says, what do you think about the move towards scholarships that are repayable from a percentage of the graduate's income stream? Does anyone want to comment on that?
I'll take a shot at it. I mean, I know that some schools are doing that. We have talked about it. It is an interesting option. I don't know if a lot of schools are doing it, you know, and there are a lot of things you've got to work out with it. So it's a program that's out there. Basically, again, a school taking part of your income once you graduate to pay back your loans. I can't say a lot about it other than that it is an option out there that some places are looking at. You may see more and more of it happening, but it's not very widespread, right? I don't know if Christine or Dan may want to say more about it.
No, I think that accurately sums it up. I think the whole scholarship, tuition, debt management issue will be one that all of us are going to be pivoting and monitoring carefully. I know we're having lots of conversations about it as well.
You know, I think that the pricing models that all schools are looking at are really, you know, we're really all looking at how can we make higher education even more affordable. I think private schools have been looking at that for a long time. And this is just one model, but there are many, many types of possibilities here. Our institution, and none that I know of in WAICU, have actually gone the route that was suggested here. But I think that we are certainly looking at different options for trying to help students not get too deep in debt and to be able to get out of it relatively quickly after graduation.
You all talked quite a bit or referenced the fact that you were able to maintain a good on-campus presence throughout this year. What do you see as you look to the fall in your crystal ball?
I'll grab that one first because I told Mary before we started that everybody wants to know what we're going to do this fall. And I said, well, you know, we all have a crystal ball and that's how we decide what to do next. But the fact is that I think all the WAICU institutions kept a significant on-campus presence during this entire COVID time. And we are all planning, to the best of my knowledge, and we've had some pretty recent conversations amongst the WAICU presidents, we are all planning to come back on campus in the fall. And it will depend to some extent for those of us within the city of Milwaukee region to follow the health department guidelines. So how, whether we need to continue to wear masks and to have social distancing and things like that remains to be seen. But I think as a vaccine gets rolled out over the summer, there certainly is hope that we can do even more on campus than we have in the past. And I think we're all planning on that. So I would ask my colleagues if they want to add anything to that.
Yeah, let's say a year ago, I put a video out that said, look, we're going to come back face to face. We'll figure it out. And we've been really blessed to do that. There's a video that hit this morning that I basically said, it is our goal to come back to some sense of normalcy, God willing, this coming year. Right now, we have all of our spring sports competing, all the fall sports competing in the spring. We have 19 athletic teams competing right now. We're testing hundreds of students every week. 2 weeks ago, we had no cases. Last week we had one. I think this week we've had none so far. So, I mean, it has been managed really well. And we're praying that that trend continues. And again, our message is we're gonna keep pivoting and figuring it out, but our goal is to be back at it. Our students desperately need it.
I think the one thing that I'll add to it is I think we're still trying to figure out what normal means. I think going back to exactly where we were when this pandemic started may not be the right way. I think we've all learned there are a lot of good things about some of these things that we've been doing, these online tools. So I think the question is, how do we use those to better enhance and better support the in-person education that we have? So get back to normal, yes. Is it the same normal? Maybe not quite. And I think that's what we're still trying to figure out.
Well, here's a related question that I think is thought-provoking. From Tom Letso, any concern about college readiness levels among high school seniors impacted by the 2020 COVID school closures?
I'll jump in on that. My previous life, before my 14 years here, I was a K-12 administrator for many years across different states. And my biggest concern that I have for what has been just happened this last year and a half is the impact academically that is just transpired is going to be felt for years and years and years to come, and it's a tragedy. And we need to own up on that. My daughter's a student here, junior ed major, but they're just telling her, look, you're going to be dealing with a whole set of dynamics that are very unique. And so obviously that's all going to trickle up to us. And we're having a lot of conversation with our high school partners too, that, I mean, they've missed a big chunk of the year, and it's inevitable it's going to have an impact. So what we invest in student services, was mentioned earlier, what we invest in health services, it's going to require ongoing heroic efforts by all of us.
I would agree. I think we're going to have to be ready for it. There have been changes. For example, our university had traditionally required one of the standardized tests, the SAT or the ACT. Like many schools, we're moving away from that now. It's because many students just couldn't take it. It's not a requirement anymore. And so I think there's, like Dan said, there will be long-term adjustments that will continue well beyond COVID that we will have to adjust to and be prepared for.
And I would just add that, one of the things that I think the WAICU schools truly excel at is meeting students where they are. We have many, many support services. And so we really do try and figure out the best practices. And this has been one of the projects that HERA has provided, is we really have groups of colleagues, employees at each of our higher institutions who are working on student retention and looking at the very best and most innovative practices to meet students where they are and to help them, whether their problems are, professional, personal, academic, whatever that might be. So I am very confident that given the dedication that both the privates and the publics and technical colleges have to student success, that we will navigate through this very successfully.
This is a question that I'm afraid you're going to know more about than I do. From Jeff Martinka, one of the Wisconsin's private schools, a longtime institution, recently announced closure plans. I don't know what school that is, so you'll have to tell us. Can you speak to plans to deal with demographic challenges, like the reduced number of 18-year-olds and what you're doing about that?
I'd love to take that one. The school is Holy Cross College. And when that happened, they reached out to many of us, and we took many of their students, honoring the students' financial aid commitments and helping them to be successful at another institution. This is certainly happening. As a matter of fact, I just got an email today that I was just quoted in USA Today about that exact university closure, because it is a very sad thing to us. We know that students choose a college and a university because they see it as a place where they can be successful, where they're a good match for the mission, the vision, and the values, and where they can get the education that they want in a particular major. So it's always sad to all of us when this happens. I think that we are all very aware of this. I don't think there's a college president out there right now who isn't looking at this demographic shift that's coming and saying, okay, what are we going to do? This is one of the places where I think we can partner with the community quite well. And in fact, here at Group 2, which John Walz and I lead, is working on providing education to business and industry for their employees who need to reskill or upskill. And as a matter of fact, we're in the process of having conversations right now with healthcare and with some technology companies about what are your needs. So if a job is changing or going away, what can we do to help employees salvage their jobs by retraining or upskilling without having to necessarily go all the way back and get a degree? Now, some may choose to do that, but we are in the process of creating micro-credentials, which is badges or certificates that would help people take the knowledge that they have and upskill to something else. And I think this may be something that will become really important in the future as more and more jobs change with the advent of technology and different preferences for society. So we are really hoping to partner with business and industry. And I think that's one area where we believe we can prepare for the future with the smaller number of high school graduates. And again, my colleagues may have other thoughts.
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think we all know it's coming. It starts in about 5 years. There's decline in high school graduates in Wisconsin and many of the states that we pull from. And the good news is we have 5 years to get ready for it. But the bad news is it's coming, and we have to do everything that we can to get ready for that shift. That the number of graduates is declining out there. It is what it is.
Yeah. On another note, what percentage of your students are foreign? This is from Avi Lankin. What impact does foreign enrollment have on their finances, and how has U.S. immigration policy had an impact on that? So a multifaceted question here.
I can start with that one. We used to have, starting a few years ago, we had probably, it was never huge, but we did have a significant set of students coming in from either the Middle East or from Brazil. These were full paying students. That has all disappeared. So right now, I would say international students, we are probably less than 5%. And it's happened for a lot of reasons. It's happened because of global economic shifts. It's happened because of immigration changes. That has been a major factor of it. But, and I'm not convinced that it's ever going to come back. I think that's just a new reality that international students will remain a fairly low percentage, at least of our enrollment moving forward.
I think Cardinal Stritch University had a pretty significant enrollment of international students. And I know that number has gone down significantly. So I would just add to that, I think different WAICU schools have different percentages of those, but it certainly has had a huge impact for those schools that were largely populated by international students.
Okay, Natraj asks, are you preparing to provide opportunities for formerly incarcerated individuals? Is this on your radar screen at all right now? Doesn't seem to be, so that's okay. Always good to think about it though, You know,
Mary, I think there are some schools who are working on this, but I'm not sure who.
Okay. one of the questions from Bob Poussant, I'm going to rephrase it a bit, but he's talking about costs shifting as you move to a virtual environment. I guess there was quite a bit of investment made this year. Do you see that as impacting your cost structure going forward in a positive way, or how do you see that trajectory?
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in on that. I think there's been sometimes a misperception that, wow, this is a virtual episode here and must be very cost effective and therefore we're saving money. And I think it's exact opposite. We've had to invest more financial resources and time and talent on this than any time in our history. This summer, we tripped out all of our classrooms to be a complete virtual capabilities. Every class is taped, every class is in real time with students, whether they're in person or back at the res hall if we had to physically distance and so forth. So I think there's been an upfront investment of the infrastructure technology-wise that will no longer be necessary other than upkeep and management. I too, though, go with John. There's going to be blessings that are going to come out of this. I had dinner with our student senate last week. They asked if things are going to, ever change and go back to exactly what it was. I don't think it'll go back to what it was. The reality is these graduates are going into employment opportunities, which, commercial real estate is going to look differently. I mean, there are businesses and organizations that are just going to, they're just the value proposition of making a dollar and delivering on a business outcome, but do it from virtual working together in teams. We need to help prepare them for that experience as well. So if anything, it has been more of an investment, more than you probably want to know, but there's going to be side blessings that will come out of it.
Great.
Okay, and then I guess I would just ask one last question. We're just about at the end of our time, but Karen Hung says, have you each experienced some personal leadership learning over the past year that you'd want to share? Just a quick sentence or two on a takeaway from the blessing of COVID.
Well, I'll start. I don't know if this is something I didn't know, but I certainly got to orchestrate it in a way, bigger way recently. And that was simply the power of collaboration. We had a COVID task force. We had a emergency leadership team. And these people were meeting every day for a long time, and then weekly, and then bi-weekly. And, the power of many makes the work a little easier. And so I think we really saw that happen. And I'm really appreciative. I always like to say, if I loved Mount Mary before this happened, now I'm crazy in love with it, because it has been an amazing trip. And for me, one that really made me love this institution even more than before.
I'll just add to that. It's been amazing to me how our faculty and our students have adapted to this. This was not easy for anybody. It was tough on our students. It was tough on our faculty. But boy, they got through this and they worked really hard. Our faculty are working incredibly hard. And we've been able to keep everybody on track. So I'll echo what Christine said. People responded well. They worked together and have done a great job with it.
Yeah, I would close. I mean, there's no manual on this stuff. We'll never take some sort of normal academic year for granted ever in the life of our missions. But I too, it's been a heroic effort of faculty, staff, students. I think all of our schools collectively are more passionate about their missions today more than ever, and take so seriously the need and the opportunity to just prepare them and equip them for a world that is changing. And I think that's the leadership lesson that the ability to pivot well, to, hey, look, no, to not feel sorry for ourselves, to can do. We're just not going to participate in the doom and gloom. It is what it is, and to move forward in it. And I tell you, it's been a most challenging year, but probably also a really rewarding year as well. Do all of it.
Well, thank you. That was really a nice way to close. I realize that I am leaving questions in the chat here, and I'm sorry I can't get to all of them. I would just share one comment in case you missed it, which Jenny Stefanich says, I encourage you to check out the PBS documentary College Behind Bars about Bard's successful program in a carceral setting. So we need to think about the incarcerated people and those reentering if we want them to be successful. It's something we should all be committed to. So thanks again. And I really, like everyone on here, appreciated your bringing this together. And I certainly learned a lot and to have even a deeper appreciation for the schools that I had before. So thank you. And I'm going to turn this back to Darren.
Thank you, Mary. First, I'd just like to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. And also, of course, for your dedication to Milwaukee, the state, and also to Rotary. To have this level of institutional knowledge and insight provided and shared by you, our members, is truly a blessing. So thank you for being here. Of course, all of us here at Rotary wish you continued success as we look to travel out the other side of this past year's challenges. So again, thank you for being here. In honor of leaders like yourselves who speak to our club, Dan, Christine, John, we will be making a donation in your names to the YWCA of Southeast Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Thank you for being here with us today. Next Tuesday, join us to welcome Mark Murphy, President and CEO of the Green Bay Packers. It should be a fantastic program. Look forward to having you all join us there. Michelle will be ending our program today with our Rotary Now More Than Ever video series. Thank you all for joining us today. This meeting is adjourned.
There are so many different types of people and diverse ideas and backgrounds, but that we can all come together because we care about where we live and where we work. But more than that, it's an international organization. We also care about the world we live in, and so that means a lot to me as well. So I can think of countless stories of Rotarians around the world, whether they were traveling for business or for fun, something happening and they needed some help, and they found it from their fellow Rotarians. So I love that we have that type of relationship and culture here in Milwaukee, but ultimately it's really a worldwide thing.